Today I'll be talking about Wonder Woman, directed by Patty Jenkins and starring Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. So what's the best way to go about this anyway? Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is that this is really the first serious adaptation that we've had of Wonder Woman. You had the adaptation back, some 40 years ago, but it was a bit more goofy, and it was more in a similar tone as to the Batman series that was on TV in the late 60s, which, that's, I guess, pretty timely, considering Adam West, as of this recording, just passed away. And we could go on for a while about that, but we'll just stick to Wonder Woman for today. So, I think really what makes this movie, stand on its own is the fact that it's a genuinely serious adaptation of Wonder Woman. You have Diana, which is fun because that's my mom's name, and that's seeing another strong woman named Diana. It's just great. She's an Amazonian, and she is on the island of all of these strong women, and she's learning all of these tough skills and is becoming a fighter. And her mom is scared for Diana to really grasp her true powers because she does not know what those powers are. And it builds up from there, and then there's a clash of worlds that come in when a fighter pilot, played like Chris Pine, comes in, and the two worlds collide, and then there's a lot of war, and then Wonder Woman, as she becomes Wonder Woman, Diana, comes back into the human world, and you can tell there's just this very outsider presence when it comes to Diana, both in the way she interacts with Chris Pine and in the way that she interacts with, the rest of the world outside of the Amazonian island. And you have a lot of realization on her end in terms of what she's capable of. And she's always trying something different. And I think one of the things I really liked about this movie is that there didn't seem to be quite a dependence on the other characters within the Justice League, as you would say, for the DC films. There has been a bit of backlash with DC in trying to ham-fist everything in the same style that Marvel has been with their movies. You could say that there are a few moments like this in this movie, and I gotta be honest with you, when I first came to this movie, I thought that Zack Snyder directed this movie, probably just because I was lazy and didn't look at it more, because I knew Zack Snyder is responsible for, the Superman films, particularly Man of Steel, and the whole style of the film just felt like it was a Zack Snyder film, and then I find out it's, Patty Jenkins, and then that's part of this whole record-breaking, box office opening with a female director and whatnot, having over $100 million in the opening weekend, which is pretty cool. My point being that it had enough of that Zack Snyder style that I mistook it as a Zack Snyder movie when I first, was in the theater and watching it. Not that this is necessarily a bad thing, but I could certainly tell there was a certain darker edge to everything. It felt very somber, very sad. You're supposed to have all these emotions come out of you. There were certain moments in the movie where I was a touch disconnected, just in terms of what was movie trailer fodder and what was actually happening in the progression of the story that we were watching unfold before our eyes. That didn't happen too often, but it happened enough that I felt I needed to mention it. But that being said, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it had a tremendous amount of character development. It let you know that Wonder Woman was in fact a woman and different, and it acknowledged those differences. I mean, this is the world that she enters in. for the bulk of this movie is, World War II. And it's quite funny just the severe disconnect between these two worlds because, Chris Pine is like, yeah, it's the war, it's the World War. And she's like, what? What is that? And he's like, it's the war, it's the war to end all war, so on and so forth. And she is just so mystified by all of this. And she has her shield and she has her sword, the what they call the God Killer on the island, and she has her lasso, which is like the lasso of truth. Um, I really felt this movie used all of those tools of hers effectively, made it fun. I was excited to see how she was going to use each of her little things, and I was not disappointed. And one of my favorite lines from this movie was just, well, I won't get it verbatim, but the gist is that Chris Pine is talking to Wonder Woman, and all these people are dying in the middle ground in like the basically no man's land, and he's saying that that's not what we're gonna take care of, and she says no, this is what I'm going to take care of, and she puts herself out in the middle of this no man's land and essentially quashes it and helps these guys win. And especially in American cinema, there's always a sense of us versus them, and especially World War II. I mean, it's the United States. We have the Allies. Wonder Woman's going to be a part of the Allies. She's not going to be a part of the Nazis. You know what I mean? So that's not much of a surprise there. But what is a surprise is just how much she really cares for the people that are in need. I felt like this movie possessed a solid, side of Wonder Woman that was caring, but didn't feel that it needed to, fit the stereotypical mold for a woman, but at the same time didn't feel the need to let you know that it was not the mold. It just let her development happen. That was part of who she was. It wasn't a matter of an agenda being pushed. And I think that was the big thing for me. This didn't feel like an agenda pushing movie. And you could say that, you can have all these agendas pushed, but that it's important, but I think sometimes you just need a superhero movie. And thankfully this movie is more than just a superhero movie, but you really get the sense that this is her story and it's not someone else trying to put in their message. This is just an unfolding of what's happened to Wonder Woman. I think it's a little weird how it starts off where she, accepts more or less this suitcase from Wayne Enterprises, hardy har har, had the Batman's coming in. And she opens the case and it's this picture and it just has this entire flashback and that's your movie. And then at the very end, they close it all up and, she writes a note, an email saying thank you, for this picture I've been pining for. Anyway, I like the interactions that Chris Pine and Wonder Woman had. I felt they really played well off of each other. You could tell that both of them had different end games, but at the same time they knew they needed to collaborate and work with each other to really accomplish their goals. Because essentially Pine was a spy. That's not really much of a spoiler, by the way. But he wants to, pick up these secrets so that he can defeat them. And Wonder Woman's been told that there is this god of war named Ares, and that he needs to be defeated. And then there's a lot of who's this, who's that, figuring out who's on what side, who can really help them, so on and so forth. Wonder Woman realizing that, all of mankind is flawed as opposed to just one side versus the other. She realizes there's flaws in all of them, but that some men, but that men are capable of being good. They're not doomed, per se. And I mean, obviously, this is not some Christian story or, really any religious ties attached to this, though. It's more mythology and, it's appealing to the base of the comics and it's appealing to, the Greek mythology of Zeus and whatnot. And even then it inserts its own storyline. But I really like this movie because I felt challenged by it. I wanted to know more about what was going to happen. I didn't feel that it was just some cliche superhero movie. It was someone who was growing up on this island, and yeah, she happened to be a little Amazonian and a bit of a badass. Okay, really a big time badass, but she was, growing into her body and just what she was really capable of. Um, and like I said before, the interactions between Wonder Woman and Chris Pine, hilarious for the most part. There was a joke or two that kind of went on a little too long, but nothing, nothing that's gonna like break the movie in half or anything. Just kind of like, okay, guys, we laughed. Let's move on. Um, some other characters that were in here. They had some like a motley crew, you could say. They had this one guy in there that was a bit of a drunkard, but like a straight shooter. Really good with the target practice and like being a sniper. That was on Chris Pine's side. You had someone else that would just kind of act as an escort, in terms of like like a cab driver or like a coach driver. Getting people from one place to another, transporting, if you would. You have this kind of spirit guy that just kind of knows, and I didn't really know if that was like an actual character in the comics. I'm not that savvy on all the comics here, but he was all right. You have this other guy who I know is in the comics, but I just I don't really know a whole lot about him, who ends up being like the real head honcho of the bad guys. You have these different devices, like the journal with all the secrets, and you have Wonder Woman like walk into a room of guys, and they all, are poppycocked and shocked that a woman is in their presence, and it's not really that surprising because it's part of the times that the movie is set in. But it is quite amusing just how stark of a contrast it is between what Wonder Woman thinks should happen and what these guys think should happen. And it's pretty obvious that there are some things that are a bit shoehorned. I said it wasn't shoehorned, but I just meant as an overall thing. There are some things that are very much like, this is what we want you to think. But they were more buried in there, per se, as opposed to in your face, which I thought was good because you really can't take your entire judgment out. Anyway, the visual effects were awesome. You had the lasso, probably my favorite. You had, it was the truth serum, if you would, of just different people and what they really want and what they really seek. And she would use it frequently on people to get her demands met. And you had the big sword that was, the God Killer, as it was proclaimed to be. You had her shield, which is awesome. That was sweet, by the way. And she was just really she was a really strong fighter too, And some people would say, yeah, she's strong for a woman, and I'm just like, she's strong, period. I just wouldn't mess with her, period. And not really a matter of whether or not she was Wonder Woman or Wonder Man or Wonder Oompa Loompa, but I just like, gosh, you intimidate me. I hope you are on my side if I'm in battle, because I would be scared if you're an enemy of mine. I'd be concerned. Yeah, I really think this was a solid entry into the DC universe, if you would. And from what I do know, she only had like a brief cameo in the Batman v Superman movie, and it's nice to see her have her own entry that was, a solid entry, and really felt like it fit in the canon of the DC universe, but at the same time didn't feel shoehorned or smushed into there, if you would. It's, you're not trying to put a round peg in a square hole, or a square circle in a round peg, whatever, right? Point is, it's a good fit with the canon, but it's good entry on its own too. And yeah, I would say this movie gets an A. I mean, like I said, there's probably a few things they might be like, what? Or, it's a bit of a trailer, man. Or, really, guys? And, if you don't like female leads, you're not going to like this movie. But if you don't like female leads, just as a general rule, I can't imagine you ever having, like, wanting to go see this, other than to just, like, check it off your comic book movie quota. But I think it's way more than that, and I think it's fun, and I think it's worth your time to go see. And if you don't see it in theaters, there's so many ways to see it now. But I just love going to the theater, man, and it's fun, and I think it's worth your time to go see it. Especially on a big screen, you can get lost into that world pretty quickly. And so I'd say, go check it out. And so I'd give it an A. All right. Well, that was shorter than some of my other reviews, but I felt it was, good to sum it up and go see it. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.